Hey there, in today's video I'm going to go over a no start issue with my particular dirt bike, an XT 225. And I've narrowed it down to the actual stator, which is inside the engine. And I'm going to kind of go over how I discovered this was the problem before I pulled it out, and how I tested it. Your stator basically creates, it's inside your left side of your engine on most small engines, and as the crank spins around on the outside of it, it creates electrical current, and it does a few things for your dirt bike. You have a set of wires that run your lights and charge your battery, which are white on mine, but different colors on different models. You also have a set of wires that I'm focused on, which creates a spark. If you ever have an issue where you're not getting a spark, or you're getting a very weak spark, and it's really a good idea to, if you've never tested a spark on an engine, to pull it off the engine and hold it against the engine block to ground it, and just crank the engine over. You'll see a nice healthy blue spark that is easily seen in the daylight. In my case, I had a very pathetic looking spark that kind of jumped around. I was like, oh yeah, I've got a spark. And I've run into this before, and it really can throw you off, because I thought I had I had spark, so I was going to look at other things. But then I kind of thought back to, no, a spark should look nice and healthy and blue, and this one's very tiny and almost like you can't see it in the daylight. So that made me focus on the spark wires from the stator, but it's not particularly the case every time. You could have other issues somewhere else. Spark plugs could be bad, but I went ahead and did the resistance test, and that's what I'm going to show you today. Resistance tests can be done on stators and anything electrical, and it's an easy thing to do because you don't have to start the engine. There's no positive and negative. It's just running both leads, running a tiny current with your multimeter through the system that you're testing, and to get resistance values. And I'm going to show you my values now. Now, if you don't know your resistance values and you have a popular bike, you don't have to worry. You'll find those online. You can find these in shop manuals. You can ask around on forums. You can find information online. You can call shops. They should tell you the resistance values that they show for the parts of your stator or what you're working on. Now, I've replaced these before on different small engines. Now, I've run into times where I could only push start the bike and it would crank the bike. So I had high resistance in my spark coil on my actual factory stator the first time I replaced it. So I could crank it over with a starter and it wouldn't start. Then I went to do my resistance test, and it saw I had high resistance, so that made sense that it would only start with a push start. This particular stator, I'm getting open loop. There's a break in between a couple of sets of wires on my spark coil. So that's what my problem is, and I'm going to show you how I found that out. Now, notice I've got the values for everything. I've got the value for the spark coil up here, green to yellow, brown to yellow, brown to green, and I've got, you'll see these listed as OMH, ohms, and those are the values for those. My stator, which are the white wires, that we got a wire mess up here, that's, run the lights and charge the battery, are here. They're supposed to have no resistance, so 0 on my multimeter. So if you have other than 0 for no resistance, or 0, you've got a problem there, high resistance. Or if you have OL, obviously you have a problem there too, open loop. You shouldn't have an open loop on anything you're testing with a multimeter, unless there's a switch that turns it off and breaks the circuit. Now, pay attention to the pulse red and white. Now, there's a pulse wire on small engines. This is separate. I've got the case off with a new one in right now, but I'm going to show you how I put this in and took off the case in just a minute. But notice on the old one that there's wires coming off. There's a ground wire. You've got a set of white wires. It could be different colors on different bikes, but basically you have the big fat wiring harness with different color wires coming out here and wires coming out here. Now, there's also a separate component which tested good on mine. It was supposed to be 800, and it tested like 807 or something, 810. that's not connected to the part I bought, the stator itself. It's a separate wiring system and component that runs in beside the stator, and it runs down through here, and there it is right there. Now that's going to time out when the spark happens, and if that's got a problem, obviously you won't be having a spark, or won't have timing for a spark, causing issues, maybe bad running issues. But if you get high resistance or bad resistance open loop here, there's your problem. You don't necessarily have to buy the entire stator, because that's not connected to the assembly itself. It's a separate set of wires that come out. I'm going to show you under the seat. They come out, they all plug in together, but it's separate. It's usually a skinnier wire that comes out of the crankcase beside this. And if that's testing good for you, don't worry about it. You don't even have to take that out, just leave it in. This is the original. This one's doing just fine. I'm focused on these wires. The meter you can buy for very cheap. I think 10 to 15 bucks is what you'll pay for this. And this will give you resistance values. The good thing about testing resistance, or for ohms, is that you don't have to have anything running. It doesn't matter where you touch the leads to. It's just you're testing the wires. You're going to make a connection with both the wires. Like say you're testing brown and green, you're going to touch the leads on the where they come out. I'll show you that in a second. And it doesn't matter red, black, which way you do it. It's just going to send a it's just going to go through the system and come back and give it a value. And you'll notice the ohm resistance testing symbol is that symbol right there. Looks like a horseshoe or something. So these values here, this is my ohm section. Now if you'll notice on my sheet, I'm testing up to 800 ohms for this stuff. Only 150 for the brown and yellow, but 670, 825. So when I'm testing the spark wires from my stator, I don't want to be down here in the 200s. I want to go up to 2000, make sure I get a reading up to 800. If I'm doing low values, like maybe, you know, just a lot lower than maybe 10, or I'm sorry, like 150 or 100, maybe click it down into here. But today I'm going to be working with 2000, because 200 to 2000 is kind of where the range is I'm going. So you flip that thing on, and you'll notice right off the bat, with the leads not touching, you see open loop. Zero. That should be what it should show. So that's, I'm completing the circuit there, and there's no resistance in this multimeter, so we're good. We're starting out with zeros there. So then we're going to be able to get our values on our test. When we test, like when I test my, let's say I'm going to test my spark wires, you can follow like the yellow through. So your yellow is going to be the top one up here on the right, and you can touch your multimeter to that one. And you want to test, like, let's say yellow and green, it's 670. This is actually the one that tested okay on mine. The rest had open loop, so I knew there was a break in the system, which is making sense why I have a weak spark. It's kind of working, you know, a part of the circuit's working, but not the other two combinations of wires. So you just follow them through. So the green would be the top left. I'm following it through there. I'm sorry, bottom left. Just follow it through front and back. Yellow's on top, brown is on the other side on the bottom. So you want to make sure you get a good connection. Now before you rule it out, make sure you got a good connection with the points on your multimeter to show you what you're getting, because you could show open loop and you're not really getting a good connection. Make sure you do it a few times and make sure you're sure you're making a good connection there. So on the whites, it's showing no, it says no resistance that I'm supposed to get. So I know when I stick my leads in here, doesn't matter what combo. So I want to do top two. Just stick your leads in, red, black, doesn't matter. The, you know, positive, negative, doesn't matter. If you get zeros on there, you're good. And you do, you know, and do all the combinations. Do top to bottom, top to side, you know, bottom to the other side, and make sure you're getting all zeros on there. If you're not, you got a problem. And if you're having issues, that's where your problem is. So again, that's kind of how your multimeter works. The good thing about doing resistance tests in this way is the bike doesn't have to be running. You can do this, and I did this before I took any of this off. I just found where they ran up out of the engine under the seat, I'll show you that in a minute, and did my test there. Once I found out I had open loop on the spark coil on these combinations of wires, I knew that that's where my weak spark was coming from, and it was time to replace. And one thing you can remember if you know, you're not experienced with this stuff is just get the values for the colored wire. So they say white wires, no resistance. Okay, as long as you notice in that fat wiring harness that comes from the stator, you know that that stator has a problem. You don't necessarily have to know it runs the lights or whatever, or charges the battery. You know, obviously if you're having charging issues or you know, stuff like that, you kind of are honed in on that, but just start testing all the wires, and they say, okay, yellow to brown, and get this resistance. So if it's coming out of that fat harness from the stator, you know that your stator has a problem, and you can just go from there. You don't have to know what's what, really, just know the colors and what the value is supposed to be. And it's not, so OHM, they'll say, you know, this is a 670 OHM, ohms, you know, resistance values. That's the stuff you're looking for online to use your multimeter. And if you get to where you're testing the smaller harness and you get bad values there, you know that that's not connected. You know, that small harness that comes out separate from the stator, you know you're dealing with the pulsar, and you can replace that and remove that bracket and put a new one in, and just leave your stator in place. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, when we're looking at the, I'll actually show you the old stator and show you what I tested on here. If you look at the bike, you'll see the same wires coming out. There's your spark coil. No need to test that, it's good. So that's coming out, and that plugged into these plugs over here. But to find that, I had to look the stator, which is in here. If you look down in here, you should see where the wires come out, and they do come out. You'll see a wire actually right here. They're coming out of the side here. We'll have to remove the sprocket plate there, and those wires came out. Just follow those wires up to where they unplug, and that's where you'll do your test. But they come out of the side of the engine, and you unbolt the side of the engine to get to it, which it'll be in here. And you see there's a good shot of the wires there coming out, if you can see that. They come out, and I just followed them up all the way up here. They run up, you just follow them, and here they go, they come out here. So that's how you find these things. So on the part that was good, I believe it was a spark coil, pulse, no, it wasn't pulse, one of them. It's the one that's not attached to the stator, that is inside of this case here, but is okay on mine, it's original. So I'm going to show you what, the value is supposed to be 800, so I'm going to find the pins, red, black, doesn't matter, find the metal where they plug in, coming from the stator, not going to the bike here, from the stator, the one running up from it. You gotta find them first. These are a little small, but you can. These pins are small enough to get in there. Okay, I've got 817 right there, so that's actually just fine. 817, and when it shows 800 is a good value. So that's still good, which is good for me because I didn't order that part. I ordered the part that had these on it, as you saw on the workbench. Spark coil or stator wires that were white were supposed to be no resistance. Doesn't mean open loop. Open loop is bad on anything you're trying to get power from, but it's supposed to show 0 essentially. So no resistance, when they say that, is 0. So I'm going to find the pins for the white here and show you what, you know, you see that. These are also good on the stator. So this part's not bad, that system. So we got 0 there. No matter if I go in the other plug, there's 3 plugs, 0. These are all good as well. Where I run into problems is with the spark coil, which again makes sense, weak spark. So we've got green, I've got green running back here, just follow it where it goes to that pin. So if I test, what's the one that was good for me? I think it was yellow and brown. If you stick these on there, on your pins inside, you see the pins, you just stick these little things on there. Make sure you got good contact before you write it off. Open loop, bad. That's where my problem is. So if I go green to yellow on the bottom, I don't have my sheet with me, but that was supposed to be like 600, 5 something to 600, I forget, 574. Actually, I think it was 620. Now that I know what the problem is, I can work on taking the stator out of the bike. And on this bike, I'm gonna have to remove the chain guard to get to all the bolts and get to the wiring and stuff, and also my skid plate. And then I'm just gonna work on taking these bolts out of the case here. There's no oil in there or anything to worry about spilling. You can just take out the bolts and remove it. It's a pretty simple thing, so I probably won't show me taking this off, but if I run into anything funny, I will definitely mention it in the video. Also, if I just had bad resistance in my pulse wires here, the red and I forget what color they are, those wires here, I wouldn't need a new stator, because I will show you what this looks like inside. It's just like a metal thing inside of here that kind of times out when the spark that's connected inside of here, and it's connected to these wires here. So make sure that you know that that's separate from the actual stator, which is these white and these colored wires here. Different colors on different bikes, but there's always going to be a pulse coil. Make sure you know, figure out what the pulse coil is. It's usually the smaller wire of the bunch. This stator stuff is a big fat wiring harness coming out of the side, but your pulse coil is going to be the little one coming out beside it. Pulse coil here. So if that's your problem, if you're not getting a spark that way, you just have to replace that, and that's going to be something different and cheaper probably. But mine's the whole entire stator. I know I didn't give a good look over there about how I was sticking these in, but for the white wires here, you know, I'm just sticking them into them. There's metal, you can see where they slide in. You're just sticking them in really good. One thing not to do is to don't write something off until you make sure you're getting a good connection, because sometimes you don't get a good connection. You think it's bad and it's not. But I've done this, I did it like 10 times over there just to double check. But on these, you're gonna have to really get your pin on there and double check, you know, hold it in there real good like that, and then take the other one and stick it in and touch really well, so you get these values. So all right, y'all, apparently I lied to you. I've got quite a bit of oil coming out as I'm pulling this case off. I've got all the bolts out on the floor, and I'm just prying it off. You can see the green gasket there, and all of a sudden there's oil coming out. So I guess I've always heard some models a lot of oil comes out, but on this one maybe it does. I don't recall this last time I did it, but it does. So it's coming out. I'm gonna pan and wipe this up. One thing I forgot to say is when you start pulling this off, you're gonna feel resistance, because that stator's magnetic in there. So it's gonna be kind of magnetically pulled to that crank on the engine there that spins a circle. So just so you know, like if you have all the bolts out and you're sure of it and it's kind of giving you some resistance, it's probably that magnet on there trying to hold it to the engine. So anyway, I'm going to clean this up, and one more tidbit. So I'll show you this on the dirt bike, but you can run these down once you pull the side of the engine off, but this is going to be connected to your ground wire. So I'm going to disconnect that and show you where it's connected, but don't forget about that and rip it out or something. It doesn't matter if you're replacing it, but sometimes they're kind of hidden and you might be tugging and not see it. On mine you can see it though. This holds in the wires, and so when I pull all this off, these bolts, and pull this off, I'll show you what it looks like. But yeah, that's what I need to get out, and I'm just unhooking the wires from the little hook and routing those down, undoing the ground wire, and we'll move on from there. Okay, a few tips from me on stator removal. So if you ever test bad on your pulse wires that are separated from the stator that we're replacing today, it has its own grommet over here, and it runs along in here and connects back here. This raised up piece, there's a piece on your flywheel that times the spark. So the raised up piece, I can show you that in just a bit, but you'll see it on your flywheel that spins around. That's what pulses it. So if you ever want to get this out, you can pull this grommet out, and this gasket needs to be removed before we go much further. But it's going to run in behind here, behind this bracket here. So no need to take this bracket off. This is your pulser, but you do want to pay special attention to this bracket for your stator, your new stator here. Pay attention to how you run the wires in, or how it's running before. It's going to go in down here with its own new grommet. This is going to come off with the stator, and these wires are going to run in behind this bracket and behind here, and keep it free of the flywheel spinning for obvious reasons. So pay special attention to how that's routed when you pull it out, because I've done these before and I've kind of put them in a little wrong, of course. Other than that, I mean, as you put this in, this is going to line up just fine, your grounding, and everything should be fine. So when this pulls out with these 3 bolts, we're just going to place this back in exactly how this one comes out. And then we're going to run those wires behind here all the way up and run them out here with the grommet. I'll make sure they're tucked behind this bracket. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove this bracket and our bolts. Looks like an Allen, so I'm going to pull those out. No need to watch that. I'll have this come out, and then we'll go from there. Okay, with the bracket removed from the top, I'm going to pay special close attention to where that wire is going, just along the side there, and that's where I want to place my stator when I pull this grommet out and put the new one in. So you just pay attention to the wiring on here, because it's a specific way down this beside here, and all the way kind of goes off, trails down that way. So something like that really is how it sits in there. Actually, there it is. You know, it's not that hard, but you can definitely have it in there wrong. Okay, old stator removed. I just popped out the grommet, and the wiring was just kind of laid in there, and I saw how it came out. I hope this isn't driving anybody too nuts, but I don't have any brake cleaner or any good cleaner. Kind of in a hurry doing this. This had a fresh oil change, so I'm just going to leave the oil the way it is and pop in my new stator, and with the new bolts, and route it in. If I had 2 hands, I'd show you how it goes in, but it's just a way. I mean, it really is simple. I'll show you with it in there before I put the bracket on, but other than that, I'm just going to pop it back in, and after that, remove the old gasket, and I have a new one with this stator, so no big deal there. Just plug that in there. Make sure the wire's all the way down where it needs to be. First here. Make sure that wire's tucked in real nice behind that bracket there. We'll do that first. Okay, I was just seeing if, you know, as this goes back on, connects in. On mine, there is a starter sprocket that needs to be in place, but this kind of pushes it back on place when I put it on. The thing I'm most concerned about is this grounding wire here is not reaching the grounding thing. I think I had this problem last time. I have to cut this open a little bit and expose a little more of that to reach down to the grounding screw. Also, I'm going to take a razor blade and trim off all this old gasket and old gasket from here, and get that all off, and then go from there. Careful not to cut any other wires when you're doing this. I'm gonna do a lot of it. There we go. I can black tape that back together. There's the thing for the pulse. It runs beside this thing here and creates a spark, just so you know. But I'm going to stick this on now. Got the gasket maker on, got my new gasket on, and hopefully this grounding wire here is going to reach down and connect to that. Here we go. Starter key goes in there. Overflow there. Alright, so basically that's the thing back on. I just slid it back on and used that. I'm going to wipe all this gasket maker off. Made a bit of a mess because, I don't know, I should have taken my time a little more, but I'll clean that off. Taking that wire out of the harness was allowing me to get that ground wire back into the screw. And then these wires here, I see a place for them to come out, but they're going to have to be, once I get them wrapped up and pulled into the bracket up there, I'm going to make sure they're clear of this sprocket. It looks like that's where they come out. That's what I remember. But coming up here, then there's a bracket I'm going to tie them into to bend it back in and get these completely out of the way. Route these wires up under the seat through here and make sure they come out to plug into my connectors, and we should be good to go. I'll show you that in a minute, but just want to show you an update on what I'm doing here. All right, I could disregard removing the air box because once I just kind of found a way to route them first, and then once I got them through, I ran them up into the bracket, didn't tighten it, and then ran them through this little hole I found here in between the air box, and I come up here and plug in all my connectors. So we've got, they're all different, and you can see where they all plug back into their respective plugs. This little wire here is going to plug into a little connector that's down here, that one there. So I'll plug all these back in. There's no way you can plug them in wrong because they're all different shapes. So obviously I know, which ones go to what. The spark, the pulse coil goes there. All these things go to their respective plugs. Also, what I ended up doing is pulling these bolts back out and taking these wires and not focusing on this little ridge here. I don't know what that's for. Maybe for the sprocket cover, but I ran it underneath this ledge, the wiring, so it's not anywhere near the sprocket. I did not like that. I'm gonna clean that up. But now the wiring is all up under here. I can push it back in and tighten it. Gasket's still in place because of the gasket sealant, and now we should be good. That's going to be out of the way, and I can lock it into my bracket up there and call it good. Everything's plugged in up here with their plugs, and now I can be done with this, and clean everything up. But yeah, you don't have to use that gasket maker. It's kind of a mess, but if you have a gasket, but I did to keep it in place. But anyway, so yeah, that wiring right there is back, behind, and underneath. Now this can go back and not cause any problems. So that's the way that went. That's why I say pay attention to the way this stuff comes out, because I looked at this, thought the wiring come out of here, but it just caused a problem with the sprocket. So All right, all cleaned up. That worked out great. Those wires coming out the way they did underneath the shelf there. It looked like a really tight clearance, but they did end up working through there. So make sure that you pay attention to the way they come out, and just plug everything back in the top like I did up here. Everything was just fine. Plug it in with my little blue wire clipped in as well. I'm going to add some oil to this thing, charge the battery up because I about killed it running this thing, or trying to crank it with a weak spark. So I'll go from there and then crank it up. All right, the XT is ready to roll again, so it'll be good for a while anyway. Haven't had too many issues with the bike, but I hope this video was helpful for you. Just seeing how you can check resistance values and learn how to use the multimeter, and that should allow you to find a lot of issues with these smaller engines. So again, I hope it helped, and thanks for watching.